Joe's lived here all his life, but he's not from around here. Street names are different, landmarks lie, and even money shows presidents he's never known. Some versions of Fort Wayne, Indiana are apocalyptical wastelands. Others harbor dark secrets. But when trouble strikes, Joe opens a trash can and tears a six-dimensional rift in reality. Inside lies a void where he glimpses the multiverse and rides unknown currents to another Fort Wayne, Indiana, hoping that this one may actually feel like home. With each crossing, his memories slip away. Only Nobuyuki, his shape-shifting Kitsune companion, remains constant, and they are hiding secrets about Joe's past that he may never remember. In a multiverse where the next trash can might lead to salvation or doom, Joe must find his way back before he forgets what home is. Middle-Aged Man in a Trash Can by William Bryan Johnson, published by Wild Rose Press, and available June 25th, 2025. Pre-orders are now available. And welcome to Tikiman and the Viking podcast. He is Tikiman.
I am H.B. Burlow, historical crime fiction writer of the Ark City Confidential and the Wichita Chronicles series, and he is the Viking.
I am William Bryan Johnson, author of Hell to Pay, The Dark Cry of Aristed, and coming June 25th, Middle-Aged Man in a Trash Can
Looking
by
forward
Wild
to
Rose
that.
Press. Hey, and it's your birthday, too.
It's my birthday, but I have one of those every year. This time you have a book coming out, so I'll defer on the birthday for right now. Okay. I'll still celebrate it.
Bud.
Thank you, and happy book day.
Yeah. And we have a very special guest. Jim Butcher is the New York Times best-selling author behind the Dresden Files, a current 17-book epic fantasy series with book 18 titled 12 Months coming January 2026. Beyond the Dresden Files, Jim has also written the Codex Alera series and launched a steampunk adventure series called the Cinder Spires. He is known for his engaging storytelling, memorable characters, and his ability to blend humor and sarcasm with high-stakes supernatural drama. Currently living in Denver, Colorado, Jim continues to expand his fantasy universe while staying connected with his passionate fan base through conventions and social media. Jim was also a recent keynote speaker at the OWFI conference. We present Jim Butcher. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. How you doing?
Doing good. Hey, I have a question. You were a longtime resident of Missouri.
Yes.
And now you're living in the mountains of Denver.
Well, I'm south there now. I'm closer to Colorado Springs.
Okay. My question is, what's wrong with Kansas?
Just it's kind of dull to drive through. It's kind of the biggest thing.
Yeah.
We got two interstates. We got two interstates. East, west,
exactly.
north, south. Yeah, and it's a big T.
East, west, north, south, and that's all I know of Kansas, actually. So, yeah.
It's quadrants.
So, you have written since when did you start writing?
I wrote my first book when I was 19 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, I spent the summer writing my first book after my first year of college, and it was awful.
Yeah.
And you ended up writing. Was Dresden your third? Was it Stormwatch? What was your third book?
Actually, Stormfront was the eighth book that I wrote.
Eighth book, okay.
Yeah. I'd written 7 others before that, and they deserve to be in the dustbin of history. They were terrible books. I wound up like scrapping them for parts for later projects, but taking characters and so on from those books for things that I did later. But it was about my 8th novel that I wrote.
It's funny how age and maturity does change the perspective of things. Back then, we were the greatest wordsmiths of all, and now we're like, "What the heck was I doing?"
Oh yeah.
How have you grown as a writer through the decades of experience and with your different series?
I don't know that you can say I've grown. I guess I've changed. I'm not sure writing is one of those things that is, you go up to a peak that you grow to, it's just you write different stuff. I think everybody puts more of themselves than they ever realize into their writing. Yes, and as I've written, my books have changed a lot. I've changed a lot on where I think, on how certain I am about moral things. which is I'm so much more confused now than I was when I was 25 about what's right and what's
Oh
wrong.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We have wisdom to guide us, says the gray-haired guys in the room.
Yeah, I guess. But it's been it's when you write, you wind up putting yourself into the character, into whatever characters you're writing, and so every character you write, you're making it up out of you. I mean, that's what they say. Writing is easy. You just rip out bits of your soul and put them on the
Right,
page.
right. So
Um,
you may have grown personally, and therefore your writing has changed. Would that
God,
be
I hope
accurate?
so. I hope I've grown. It seems like maybe I should have by now.
Well,
Although I still find myself doing much the same things. I still love my video games. I still love, going out to LARP. I still love playing games. I'm still, going stubbornly going out and hitting the weights all the time. I'm trying that much hasn't changed so much.
Actually, I have a
But
D&D group meeting at 2 after this interview.
nice. Sunday D&D is the best.
It is. It is. You use mythology and folklore quite a bit in your writing. Is there any mythologies that you don't think you'll ever use or that you tend to stay away from?
Um, the ones that I use are mostly the ones that I'm most familiar with because they're sort of the ones that I grew up with. Um, I would hesitate to go into very much Hindu mythology, for example, because it is huge and incredibly complex, and it would be very easy to do it disrespectfully. And I don't want to do that. Whatever I'm doing, I want to treat it with respect, and to do that, you've got to know it. And going into Hindu mythology is one of those things that you could spend a lifetime doing and still not learn all of it because they've just had it for so long.
Right.
Chinese mythology, much the same way.
oh yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Which actually takes me to kind of a Dresden verse question. The Jade Court. You've mentioned them before.
Yeah.
Are they ever going to make an appearance?
Probably not. I mean, they're isolationists. They mostly don't leave the Yangtze River Valley. We'll probably see some of their agents at some point.
Okay.
But they've got better things to do than mess with the lesser world.
Okay. And I know you use Odin in your book.
Yes.
Are you ever bringing in Thor? I think was it Butters had a was it a can opener or something he referred to as Mjolnir?
Yeah, he had a little Mjolnir bottle opener.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think I have one of those off screen here.
Oh,
Yeah,
good
yeah.
Lord. Oh. What question that what after all this time, after all these series, what prevents burnout? What keeps writing fresh for you? What keeps the craft interesting for you?
Well, I mean, the craft itself is often not so interesting. I like to compare writing to carpentry. Carpentry is based. I mean, carpentry gets really, really, really involved, right? But at its core, carpentry is building boxes, and you have to build the box with that is going to hold together before you can do anything else. Now, then after that, you can do interesting stuff and make it really cool and make it really neat. But at the core, you got to be able to build that box over and over and over again, and that's what writing's like too. Your basic scenes, your basic, conflict setback, feeding into an emotional sequel where then you've got to figure out how your character reacts to what's just happened. And then you've got to know what to do next. That just is the same over and over and over. But as you get more and more familiar with it, you get to spend less time thinking about building that box because you've built a zillion boxes and you know how to build them by now. And more time thinking about, well, what am I going to do to make this interesting? What am I going to do to make it funny? What am I going to do to make it, more heartbreaking for the reader, to read this part? And that's what, and that's what keeps it interesting, is because after you've gotten away from, your basic, nuts and bolts craft stuff, well, not gotten away from it, but after you've internalized it so much that you can't get away from it, then you can start thinking about other things.
So it's the carpenter versus the architect.
You got to be a bit of both,
right?
I mean, if you're not able to do the carpenter's job, then the high flying architect's job is not going to work either.
Right, correct.
So you want to be able to do that cool, pretty, beautiful stuff that's going to hit people really hard and that they're going to remember and make it. They're going to put on T-shirts and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you got to have those basic nuts and bolts, or you're done. You just can't do it as a writer.
And I told you at OWFI, I think it was those basic nuts and bolts in your novels that I read several times over and took notes. And when I was trying to write my first book, I was just looking at it over and over again, going, "Ooh, what could I do for a cliffhanger here? What could I do to
Yeah, yeah,
drive the attention?" And
Right.
the one thing I do love about your books is you do have a cliffhanger after cliffhanger, but you also allow time for the reader to breathe. Because
yes,
if you don't allow it's like a marathon. If you run a person a marathon and they don't know how to slow down, they don't know how to stop sprinting, they're done within the first mile.
right.
So appreciate that. Where do you write? Do you have a specific place that you tend to write every day, or do you just kind of flow around to wherever it hits you?
I've got an office that I'm in right now,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm doing this interview that is supposedly the place for all of my professional stuff. But what I find is that as long as I have that space set aside, I rarely need to go in there to use it. So I will do most of my writing sitting on the couch with my laptop, with my cat laying across my knees and my dog under my left arm. So my wrist is at this weird angle while I'm typing, and that's how I get most of it done. I do a little bit writing before I go to sleep. Occasionally, if I'm not quite sleepy yet at bedtime, I'll take the laptop with me and I'll bang out a couple of pages before I go to sleep. Um, and I'll take my laptop with me places like if I'm taking the stepson to his boxing lessons, I'll take the laptop with me and put in my headphones and while he's out there hitting the heavy bag, I'll be wrapping out another chapter.
Okay. Okay.
When is your favorite time to write?
Um, Lately it used to be at night. I mean, I used to be like exclusively the magic could not happen until after the sun went down. That was always the way it was for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would start writing at about 10 p.m. and I would alternately write and play video games until I was done with my count, and then I would go to bed usually around 6 a.m. And
Oh,
sleep until noon or one. That was kind of what was my standard routine. And then I would do my obligatory life stuff during the afternoon and early evening, and then get back to the writing. That was just sort of day after day. These days, I'm better. I'm getting older, and it gets a little harder to concentrate. So I kind of get up and say, okay, time to write, and start working. And if it doesn't work right away, I won't kill myself over it. I'll say, all right, take a break, come back, take a break, go out, take a walk the dog, do your workout, whatever it is you're going to do, then come back and sit down and try again. I'll do it. And if I get to my count for the day, then I'm done. And if not, no problem. Take a break, go play some video games. You sit down before dinner, try it again, wrap out a few more words. And as long as I'm getting out, a couple hundred words every time I sit down, by the
right.
end of the day, I'm going to have several pages done. And if
Mm-hmm.
you can do that on a regular basis, you're fine as a writer.
What do you aim for word count?
Right now, I'm doing 2,000 words a day, working
Okay.
on a novella,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
which is going to take me about 3 weeks to write. It's going to come in, I don't know, around 30 or 40,000 words, I think. Um, but that should do it, because I don't ever hit my actual count every day. I mean, it's always
Right.
wildly one way or the other. I got 3,200 words done today. I got 600 words done today, when I was aiming for 2,000. But um, it's more the fact that you're getting steady progress on each day, I think, is more important than how much you get done each day.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the writing's going well, I'll just keep going, and I can go for a long time. Occasionally, I'll have those big days that are 6,000, 8,000 words, and then there are other days where not so much,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay.
With different series, different things that you're doing, do you have a problem sometimes keeping it together, or do you tend to just jump worlds and
Oh,
focus on what you're doing?
oh God, yes, I have so much problem with it. I'm very lucky in that I have several beta readers who are they are detail oriented human beings, which I'm not a detail oriented human
Mm-hmm.
being.
Oh,
But
okay.
these folks are, and they'll be like, no, no, no. In book 3, chapter 12, in this page, this paragraph, you said completely the opposite. I'll be like, oh my God, you're right. Okay, I've got to fix that. Um, Although it's
Oh
gotten
my.
easier since the fans made a Wikipedia. The
Yeah.
Dresden Fan Wiki is something that I can go to. How many Carpenter children are there again?
Oh
Oh,
my.
wait, how old are
Jeez.
they? Oh my gosh, they grow up so fast. Like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I've been very fortunate because I can do that. Going into the new stuff, that's different, and for instance, the Cinder Spires is the series I'm working on right now, outside of the Dresden Files, because I got to have something that's non-Dresden to keep me from just hating Dresden. I don't want to become the writer that hates his creation. That would be terrible for everyone. So going into there, though, that's a completely new space, and it's a completely new world. And I've got several notebooks that I've got notes in about that world, where I've written stuff down and figured out how everything worked. Figured out how each different society and each different spire, and I've got to keep track of all of that. And I have to keep track of all these things that I'm not even putting in the books, but I have to know them because I'm writing the story.
Exactly.
All this stuff is happening off screen in order for it to sound legit when I'm writing. Because if you're just making stuff up off the cuff, the readers are going to pick up on that. You kind of have to put in your homework on the iceberg theory of a story. Where the story's like an iceberg, only 10% of it is above the surface, but you still have to do the other 90% that's below the surface in order to support what they can see. And they'll know if it's not supported. They'll look at that and go, that doesn't make sense at all.
Is your approach to a novella different than writing any novel?
No, the novella is just simpler. There's fewer subplots. Honestly, when I'm writing the multiple viewpoint character books like Alera or the Cinder Spires, I'm essentially just writing several novellas that I'm trying to interweave between the characters.
Okay.
But yeah, it's no different. All stories are the same. Short stories are the same as novellas, are the same as novels. It's just the shorter the story is, the less space you have to work in. The smaller the ship, the smaller the bottle you're trying to put the ship in. So the little tiny ones, I think they're harder than writing the big ones. Right. I think writing a novel is easier than writing a novella, which is easier than writing a short story.
I used to write poetry, and I don't think I could go back to doing that, because you want to talk about refining. That's even smaller. I mean, the word choice has to be more refined, more specific.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and it is a completely different sort of exercise of the mind. But I think one of the things that we've lost in recent years for novels is, it used to be that you got started writing short stories, and you would write 30, 40, 50, 60 short stories before you ever got a novel published. And yet, because you were writing, these mini novels, short stories all stories are the same. It's just, how much space you have to work with, that trained you for the larger novels. And the larger novels, you think about the novelists of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and how lean their novels were. How quick the pacing is, how swift and precise the dialogue is. And it's not like they were laboring day after day to make that happen. They were just going to work every day, and that's how they did their job.
Right.
And then today, it's a very, depending on the genre, of course, it's a very different sort of balance of what kind of language is being used.
And that concludes our Part 1 interview with Jim Butcher. Stay tuned. We'll be back after the July 4th holiday with our second part of the interview. Stay safe and keep all your fingers. And remember, read a book. Tikiman and the Viking podcast, brought to you by Rumination of Thunder Media. The following intro and outro music was used for this media project. The music Find Them by Alexander Nakrata. Free download from filmmusic.io. License Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International.